"Don't throw me out. I'll warm your bed," she pleaded, but he chose to warm her heart first. Most people were safely tucked in their homes, wrapped in blankets, sipping hot drinks, or hurrying to reach the warmth of indoors. But for those who had nowhere to go, the streets offered little more than harsh winds and empty alleys. Armin was walking home after a long day at work. He had been busy at his small office, dealing with numbers, meetings, and deadlines, and now all he wanted was the comfort of his small apartment, a hot meal, and some quiet. The city around him was unusually silent, as though it too was shivering in the cold. His coat was thick, his scarf wrapped snugly around his neck, and his gloves protected his hands from the icy gusts. Despite all this, he felt a strange chill, not the winter cold but something heavier, an emptiness he could not explain. As he turned a corner, his eyes caught a movement near a dim streetlight. At first, he thought it was just a stray cat or a plastic bag tossed by the wind. But as he walked closer, he realized it was a person. She was a young woman, crouched on the pavement, wrapped in a thin, worn-out blanket that offered little protection from the biting wind. Her hair was tangled, and her clothes were clearly not enough to shield her from the freezing temperature. She was trembling violently, hugging her knees tightly to her chest, as if trying to keep the warmth inside herself. Armin stopped in his tracks. Something about her small, fragile figure made him pause. Most people would have walked by quickly, avoiding any interaction, pretending not to notice. But he could not. Her eyes lifted briefly, meeting his, and in that brief glance he saw a mix of fear, desperation, and a quiet plea. It was as if she was silently asking for help, but too proud or too scared to speak. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, almost a whisper, but it carried an urgent honesty. "Don't throw me out, I'll warm your bed," she said. The words were startling, not because of what they suggested, but because of the raw vulnerability behind them. It was not a bold or flirtatious statement. It was a desperate cry for warmth, both physical and emotional. Armin felt a knot in his chest. He had never met her, yet something inside him stirred, a sense that he could not ignore her plea. He took a cautious step closer and knelt down to her level. "Hey, it's okay. You don't have to do anything. Are you cold?" he asked gently. His voice carried a calmness that seemed almost unnatural in the harsh, lonely streets. She looked at him, unsure whether to trust him. Her lips quivered, and she shook her head slightly as if saying, "I don't know if anyone cares. It's freezing and you need a warm place." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small chocolate bar and a bottle of water he had bought earlier. "At least eat something. You look hungry," he said. She hesitated, staring at the food like it was a precious gift. Finally, she accepted it, her hands trembling as she unwrapped the chocolate and took a small bite. Her eyes watered, but not just from the cold. "I thank you," she whispered, barely audible. "People usually they just pass by, they don't care." Her voice cracked slightly, and Armin noticed the faint trace of tears on her cheeks. "What's your name?" he asked, trying to make a connection, to give her some dignity in a moment that must have felt so dehumanizing. "Zara," she replied softly, almost afraid that speaking aloud might make her too real, too vulnerable. "Well, Zara," Armin said, smiling gently, "my name is Armin. Come on, let's find a warm place. You can rest, have some tea, and maybe we can figure out what's next together." He extended his hand, not forcefully, but in a way that showed trust and safety. Zara looked at his hand for a long moment. She was clearly torn between caution and relief. Her life on the streets had taught her to be wary of strangers, to assume that every offer of help had a hidden cost. Yet something about Armin's calm demeanor, the kindness in his eyes, and the absence of judgment made her hesitate just long enough to take his hand. The warmth of his palm was almost shocking after hours in the cold, and for the first time that day, she felt a small flicker of hope. They walked slowly together, Armin guiding her to a small cafe nearby that was still open. The lights inside were warm and inviting, and the smell of fresh bread and coffee filled the air. He helped her sit down in a quiet corner, away from the few customers who were enjoying their drinks and pastries. He ordered a cup of hot chocolate for her and a coffee for himself, then sat across from her, watching carefully as she took a tentative sip. "This is nice," Zara said, her voice barely above a whisper. She looked around the cafe, almost afraid that someone would tell her to leave, that this kindness was temporary. "It's yours for as long as you want," Armin said softly. "No one will ask you to leave. Just rest, eat, and warm up. That's all." The warmth of the cafe seeped into Zara's chilled bones, but it was more than just physical warmth. It was a feeling of safety, of being seen, of not being judged for being cold, tired, or desperate. Armin watched her closely, noticing the subtle signs of relief that began to show. The way her shoulders relaxed slightly, the small smile that appeared when she finally tasted the chocolate, the way her eyes, though still wary, no longer darted around in fear. As the evening went on, Armin asked gentle questions about her life. He learned that she had run away from a home that was unsafe, where she had faced neglect and hardship. She had spent months surviving on the streets, moving from one corner to another, trusting almost no one. Each small question he asked was met with hesitation, but also a growing willingness to share. She told him about nights spent under bridges, about the hunger that gnawed at her, and about the fear of being alone. Armin listened quietly without interruption or judgment. He didn't offer solutions right away, didn't give advice she wasn't ready to hear. He simply listened. And in that act of listening, he gave her something that the streets never could: acknowledgement. She was real. She was seen, her struggles mattered. Hours passed and the cafe started closing for the night. Armin knew he couldn't just leave her on the streets again. He gently said, "Zara, I have a small apartment nearby. You can come with me tonight. I'll make sure you're safe and warm just for tonight. No strings, no expectations, just warmth and safety." Her mind raced with caution and fear. She had learned to expect danger from every kind gesture, but something in Armin's calm and sincere tone made her hesitate long enough to consider the offer. Finally, after a long pause, she nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll go," she said. As they left the cafe, the cold night didn't seem as harsh. The city was still quiet, but Zara felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. It wasn't the promise of a grand solution to her problems, but the simple assurance that someone cared, that someone would not turn her away. And for that night, that small act of kindness was enough to make her believe that maybe, just maybe, the world could offer warmth, not only to the body but also to the heart. The small apartment was modest, but it had warmth that Zara had not felt in a long time. The faint smell of old books mixed with the scent of cooking spices filled the air. Armin guided her in, making sure she took off her wet shoes and coat. "Sit by the heater," he said gently. "You've been out in the cold for hours. Let yourself warm up." She moved slowly, her body stiff from the chill and from months of living on the streets. The warmth hit her like a soft blanket and she shivered again, but this time it was from relief, not fear. Armin disappeared into the small kitchen area and returned with a plate of bread, cheese, and some fresh fruit he had bought earlier. "Eat something," he said, placing it gently in front of her. "You need strength." She looked at him, hesitant at first, as if unsure whether this kindness was real. Then slowly she picked up a piece of bread and took a bite. The taste was simple, but it felt like luxury compared to the scraps she had been surviving on for months. As she ate, she began to relax slightly. Her eyes, still wary, took in the small apartment, the books neatly stacked on a shelf, a small plant on the window sill, and a framed photograph of a smiling family. She noticed that everything seemed ordinary, yet the ordinary comfort was something she had missed for far too long. It was not only the warmth of the heater or the food. It was the normalcy, the safety, and the absence of fear that made her heart flutter with a strange, unfamiliar feeling. Armin sat across from her, careful not to crowd her. He knew that trust could not be rushed. "Zara," he began gently, "I don't want you to feel pressured. You don't have to tell me anything you're not ready to share, but if you want to, I'm here to listen. I've been on the streets for a long time. I ran away from home, it wasn't safe there. People, they didn't care. Not really. Her eyes filled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away, embarrassed by her vulnerability. Armin didn't say anything immediately. He simply nodded and waited patiently, showing her through his silence that it was okay to cry, okay to feel, and okay to trust for just a moment. After I left, Zara continued, her voice trembling, I thought I would be free, but it was worse. The streets, they're cold, not just because of the weather, but because of people. Everyone is trying to survive, and survival doesn't leave room for kindness. I slept under bridges in abandoned buildings. Sometimes I didn't eat for a whole day. I thought maybe nobody would ever care about me again. He had heard stories of hardship before, but hearing them directly from someone who had lived it made it real in a way that statistics and reports never could. He wanted to offer words of comfort, but he realized that right now, his presence alone was more important than anything he could say. I'm sorry you had to go through that, he said finally, his voice soft and steady. You didn't deserve any of it. Nobody should have to face what you faced. She began to tell him more slowly, carefully. About the people she had met, the nights she had cried alone under the cold sky, the moments when she had almost given up. With each word, the tension in her body eased slightly. Talking about her pain made it lighter, as though sharing it with someone else removed some of the burden. Armin listened quietly, occasionally nodding or offering a gentle word of encouragement. You're stronger than you know, he said at one point. It takes courage to survive every day the way you have. You've made it this far, and that's something to be proud of. She realized that kindness could exist, that people could be sincere without expecting anything in return. For a young woman who had learned to expect betrayal and disappointment, this was a revelation. As the night deepened, Armin suggested they make some tea. The simple act of boiling water and preparing tea felt like a small ritual, a way to bring calm into their lives. They sat at the small kitchen table, sipping their warm drinks in silence, listening to the quiet hum of the city outside. For the first time in months, Zara felt a sense of normalcy. She felt safe. Over the next few days, Armin helped Zara in small ways. He encouraged her to clean up, to take care of herself, and even helped her find some basic clothes to replace the ones that were too worn out. Every step was small, but each one was significant for Zara. She began to see that life could offer stability, even if it was fragile. He also gently encouraged her to consider finding a part-time job, something to help her gain independence. Zara was hesitant at first, unsure whether she could trust the world enough to take that step. But with Armin's patient guidance, she began to believe in herself again. Each day, she grew more confident, not just in her ability to survive, but in her ability to live fully. One evening, as they shared a simple meal together, Zara spoke softly, almost to herself. I never thought anyone would care not like this. I thought I was invisible. It was a small light, but a powerful one, bright enough to start melting the shadows of her past. Zara began to open up more each day, sharing her dreams and fears, her small joys and the sorrow she had carried. She talked about wanting to study again, about wanting a life where she didn't have to fight for every meal or sleep on cold pavements. Armin encouraged her, reminding her that it was never too late to start over, that every small step was worth celebrating. Through these conversations, they began to understand each other in ways that words alone could not capture. Armin learned about the resilience and intelligence that Zara had developed through her hardships. Zara realized that kindness could exist without expectation, that there were people willing to help simply because it was the right thing to do. By the end of the week, Zara had started to feel more comfortable, more secure. She still carried the scars of her past, but they were no longer the only thing defining her. She was beginning to see a future where she could be safe, happy, and valued. And Armin, in helping her find that hope, discovered a new sense of purpose as well, an understanding that sometimes the simplest acts of kindness could change a life forever. That week marked a turning point in both their lives. Zara learned that survival was not just about avoiding danger, but about allowing herself to be helped, to be cared for, and to believe in goodness again. Armin realized that offering kindness was not a burden but a gift, not just to the person receiving it but to himself as well. By the time the weekend arrived, Zara and Armin had established a rhythm. Morning walks to the nearby market, shared meals, quiet evenings with tea, and long conversations that often stretched late into the night. Every interaction deepened their understanding and trust. The initial tension, fear, and hesitation were gradually replaced by a fragile but growing bond, one built on respect, empathy, and the shared understanding that life could be cruel, but it could also be beautiful when people chose to care. And in those simple moments, as Zara laughed softly at a joke Armin made or watched the steam rise from her cup of tea, she began to believe that warmth was not only a physical thing. It was emotional, spiritual, and deeply human. She began to understand that the world was not entirely cold, that there were pockets of warmth and hope if one was willing to accept them. That first week, filled with small acts of trust, listening, and care, set the foundation for something much larger. It was not a love story yet, but it was the beginning of a deep connection that would grow with time, patience, and understanding. And for Zara, it was proof that the world still had people who could care without expecting anything in return, a lesson that would forever change the way she saw life. The days that followed were slow but meaningful, each one building a foundation of trust between Armin and Zara. What had begun as a single act of kindness had grown into a quiet routine that both of them came to rely on. The small apartment, once a stranger's refuge, was beginning to feel like a place of stability for Zara, a place where she could breathe without constantly worrying about the next cold night or an empty stomach. Armin was careful not to rush anything. He understood that trust, especially for someone like Zara, had to grow naturally. He never pressured her, never asked for more than she was willing to give. Instead, he offered small gestures that conveyed genuine care. A warm blanket left for her on the sofa, a cup of tea ready when she returned from her short walks, and a listening ear whenever she felt ready to share her thoughts. These actions were simple, yet for Zara, they meant the world. She had lived so long expecting rejection that even these quiet acts of kindness felt revolutionary. One morning, Armin suggested they take a short walk to the nearby park. The air was crisp, and the sun was just beginning to rise, casting a soft golden glow over the city. Zara hesitated at first. The world outside had been a source of fear for so long that stepping into it without protection felt risky. But Armin's calm presence reassured her, and she finally nodded, slipping into a warm coat he had lent her. The park was quiet, with only a few early risers jogging or walking their dogs. Zara observed the people around her, their laughter, their conversations, the casual joy of lives untouched by hunger or fear. She felt a pang of longing, but it was different this time. Instead of feeling excluded or hopeless, she felt inspired. Perhaps she too could have a life beyond mere survival. As they walked slowly along the path, Armin spoke gently about small, realistic goals. "I know it's hard to imagine now," he said, "but you could do things you enjoy again. Study, work, even learn something new. Little by little, we can make it happen." Yet with each word Armin spoke, a seed of hope planted itself in her mind. Perhaps life could offer more than cold pavements and hungry nights. Over the next few days, they began introducing small routines. Zara helped Armin with simple household chores like cooking and cleaning, which gave her a sense of purpose. He encouraged her to share her thoughts while they worked together. They talked about everything from simple childhood memories to dreams she had put aside for survival. Armin learned about her love for drawing, a talent she had abandoned when life became too harsh. He suggested she could try drawing again, if only for herself, as a way to heal. The suggestion was met with skepticism at first, but the warmth behind it made her consider trying. One afternoon, Armin brought home a sketchbook and a small set of pencils. "No pressure," he said with a smile, "just for you. Draw anything that comes to mind. Don't think about the rest of the world, just enjoy it. She began with simple shapes, then slowly moved on to faces, trees, and scenes from memory. Each stroke of the pencil felt like a small step toward reclaiming a part of herself she thought she had lost forever. Armin watched quietly, never interrupting, only offering a smile or a word of encouragement when she looked up uncertainly. As the days turned into weeks, Zara began to relax more. She started venturing outside to run small errands on her own, building confidence with each successful trip. Armin celebrated these milestones quietly, proud of her courage. For Zara, the progress was gradual but profound. She was learning to trust again, not just Armin but the world itself, bit by bit. One evening, as they sat by the window watching the city lights, Zara spoke softly. "I never thought anyone would care, not like this. I thought kindness always came with a price." Her voice was almost a whisper, fragile but honest. Armin turned to her, his expression gentle. "Kindness doesn't have to come with strings," he said. "Sometimes it's just about helping someone because it's the right thing to do." It wasn't just the words, it was the consistency behind them. Every day, Armin's actions matched his words. He didn't demand anything from her, didn't try to control her, and never made her feel like a burden. That kind of unwavering patience and respect was something she had never experienced, and it began to change the way she saw the world. They began sharing stories of their pasts, learning more about each other in quiet, meaningful ways. Armin talked about his childhood, the mistakes he had made, and the lessons he had learned. Zara listened with interest, seeing a person who, despite flaws and challenges, was capable of empathy and generosity. She realized that people could be more than what they appeared on the surface, and that trust, once given and nurtured, could open doors to unexpected connections. One particularly cold night, Zara shivered while brushing off the last remnants of frost from the window. Armin noticed and immediately wrapped a thick blanket around her shoulders. "It's okay," he said softly. "You don't have to be strong all the time. You can lean on me when you need to." It was the warmth of being valued, seen, and protected in a way that didn't diminish her independence or dignity. As their bond grew, Armin encouraged Zara to reconnect with her education. She had dropped out of school due to her circumstances, but he suggested small steps: reading, practicing writing, and exploring subjects that interested her. At first, she resisted, convinced that learning was a luxury she couldn't afford. But with gentle guidance, she began to read small books and write her thoughts in a journal. Each page filled was a testament to her resilience, a small victory that made her feel capable and alive again. Their interactions were simple, yet each was layered with care. Morning breakfasts, shared walks, drawing sessions, and quiet evenings talking or reading together became the rhythm of their days. Zara's laughter, once rare and fleeting, began to return naturally. The apartment, once just a shelter from the cold, became a place of growth, healing, and hope. One afternoon, while sitting in the park and sketching, Zara looked at Armin and said softly, "I never imagined someone could just care. No expectations, no judgment, just care." For years, she had equated kindness with strings, with hidden agendas. But in Armin, she saw something different: consistency, patience, and genuine concern. It was not just the safety of a roof over her head or a meal in her stomach. It was the reassurance that someone believed in her, that someone saw her worth even when the world had tried to erase it. By the end of the month, Zara's transformation was subtle but undeniable. She moved with more confidence, spoke with a clearer voice, and allowed herself to enjoy small pleasures she had long forgotten. Each small step forward was a triumph, and Armin celebrated them quietly, proud of the trust and courage she was rebuilding. Their relationship, built on patience, respect, and empathy, had grown into something profound. It was not romantic yet, but it was deeply human, a bond forged through trust, shared vulnerability, and the simple act of showing up for each other. Zara had begun to heal, and in helping her, Armin had discovered a new depth of compassion within himself. Even in the quiet moments, as they shared tea by the window or walked through the park, the connection between them was unmistakable. They had both learned that true warmth was not just about shelter or food. It was about patience, understanding, and emotional presence. And so, the days passed, each one filled with small victories and quiet moments of connection. Zara's past was still there, a shadow that sometimes threatened to overwhelm her, but she was learning to navigate it with the support of someone who genuinely cared. Armin, too, was learning the profound impact of simple kindness and the patience required to rebuild trust that had been broken by a harsh world. In the end, what began as a simple act of giving a young woman warmth and safety had blossomed into a deeper understanding of what it meant to care for someone. It was no longer just about surviving the cold nights. It was about living fully, rebuilding confidence, and learning to trust again. And through these small, deliberate acts of trust and compassion, both Zara and Armin were discovering a connection that would shape their lives in ways neither had imagined when they first met on that cold winter evening. The winter slowly began to loosen its grip, and the days grew longer and brighter. The cold that had once felt endless started to fade, replaced by the gentle warmth of early spring. But for Zara, the true change was not in the weather, it was in her heart. The coldness she had carried for so long, a mixture of fear, loneliness, and distrust, was slowly being replaced by a sense of hope and belonging. She was beginning to believe that life could be kind again, that people could care without expecting anything in return. Armin noticed the change too. He had watched Zara carefully over the past weeks, seeing how her posture had shifted from guarded to relaxed, how her smiles were becoming more frequent and genuine, and how her eyes no longer darted nervously at every sound outside. Each small sign of comfort and confidence made him quietly proud, but he knew that trust was fragile. It could not be rushed or forced. It had to be nurtured patiently. One evening, as they sat together on the small sofa in the apartment, sipping tea, Zara spoke softly. "I used to think that people only cared when they wanted something," she said, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. "I never imagined that someone could just care for the sake of caring." Every day, he had shown her that trust could exist, that compassion could be genuine, and that she could rely on someone without fear. Slowly, the walls she had built around herself began to crumble. Zara had started to take small steps toward rebuilding her life. She had resumed drawing, filling page after page with sketches that reflected her memories, dreams, and emotions. Some were simple, like scenes of streets and trees, while others were more detailed, capturing expressions she had seen in people along her journey. Drawing became her way of expressing feelings she had long buried: pain, hope, fear, and joy. Armin encouraged her to continue, praising her talent and reminding her that creativity was a gift, a way to heal and grow. In addition to drawing, Zara began to focus on small educational goals. Armin had suggested she start with simple reading exercises and writing in a journal to rebuild her confidence. At first, she had resisted, unsure whether she could commit to anything beyond survival. But with gentle encouragement, she began to write daily, recording her thoughts, memories, and reflections. Each sentence she wrote was a small victory, a sign that she was reclaiming a part of herself that had been lost to hardship. Their days became filled with these small yet meaningful routines. Mornings were often spent together over breakfast, discussing plans for the day or sharing stories from their pasts. Afternoons were for walks, sketching, or reading, sometimes in the quiet comfort of the apartment, sometimes outside in the park where spring flowers were beginning to bloom. Evenings were for tea and conversation, sharing small joys and observations from the day. Every interaction deepened the bond between them, creating a sense of stability and emotional connection that both had been missing. One day, while they were walking through the park, Zara paused to watch a group of children playing. Their laughter was bright and carefree, and she felt a pang in her heart. "I miss feeling like that," she admitted softly. "I used to laugh like that when I was little, before everything went wrong." But you don't have to stay in the past. You can create new moments of happiness, little by little, and I'll be here to help you find them. Perhaps joy could exist again in her life, not as a fleeting luxury, but as a real and attainable part of her everyday world. As weeks passed, Zara began to allow herself to experience happiness more fully. She laughed more often, sometimes at small jokes Armin made, sometimes at her own sketches or the simple beauty of a blooming flower. Each moment of laughter was a triumph over the darkness that had haunted her for so long. Armin cherished these moments quietly, understanding that true healing was a gradual process, built one small step at a time. Evening conversations became a time for reflection and shared dreams. Zara spoke about the life she had imagined before hardship took over, dreams of studying, of exploring the world, of connecting with people who valued her for who she was. Armin listened attentively, offering encouragement and reassurance. He reminded her that it was never too late to pursue these dreams, and that every small step she took was meaningful. One night as they sat by the window watching the city lights twinkle, Zara spoke with quiet vulnerability. "I used to feel invisible," she said, "like nobody cared if I lived or died, but now I feel seen. I feel safe. And you are never alone again." Their relationship was evolving into something profoundly human, a connection based on trust, care, and mutual respect. It was not yet romantic, but it was deeply emotional, a bond forged through shared vulnerability and the simple act of being there for one another. For Zara, it was a revelation. She could be supported and loved without strings attached. For Armin, it was a reminder of the transformative power of patience and genuine kindness. Zara also began to explore the city again, tentatively at first, and then with growing confidence. She visited the small shops and parks she had once avoided, interacting with people and observing life beyond her apartment. Each small excursion reinforced the idea that the world could be kind and safe, and that she had the strength to navigate it. Armin accompanied her sometimes, giving her reassurance, but he also allowed her to take independent steps, understanding that self-confidence was essential for true healing. In these days, they shared quiet moments of joy, watching sunsets, making simple meals together, or sharing stories over tea. Each of these moments, though ordinary in appearance, carried profound meaning. They were evidence that life could be rebuilt, one day at a time, and that healing was possible even after years of hardship. One afternoon, while Zara was sketching in the park, she paused and looked at Armin with a shy smile. "I think I'm learning how to hope again," she said softly. Armin smiled back, his heart warmed by her words. "That's wonderful," he said. "Hope is the first step toward a better life, and you've already taken it." Trust had been rebuilt, fear had been softened, and both had discovered the profound power of patience and genuine care. They had learned that emotional warmth could be as vital as physical safety, and that healing required not just protection, but encouragement, respect, and the freedom to grow at one's own pace. By the end of the spring, Zara's life had transformed in ways she had never imagined possible. She was no longer the frightened, shivering girl on the street. She was a young woman with confidence, hope, and the ability to trust again. And Armin, who had offered her warmth and safety when she needed it most, had discovered a connection that went far beyond simple friendship, a bond rooted in empathy, patience, and the shared understanding of what it meant to care deeply for another human being. Even in the quiet moments, as they sipped tea by the window or watched the city lights, the transformation was evident. Zara's laughter came more easily, her eyes sparkled with renewed hope, and her steps were lighter, no longer burdened by fear. And in the way Armin looked at her, with patience, respect, and gentle pride, she realized that warmth and trust could indeed heal even the deepest wounds. In these shared moments of growth and understanding, both Zara and Armin discovered that life, despite its hardships, could offer beauty, connection, and hope. And they knew that the bond they were building, born out of patience, kindness, and shared humanity, would remain a source of strength and comfort for both of them in the days to come. The spring had fully arrived, painting the city in shades of green, yellow, and soft pink from the blooming flowers. The warmth in the air seemed to mirror the change in Zara's heart. She had grown stronger, more confident, and more hopeful with each passing day. Life, which had once felt cold, lonely, and uncertain, was beginning to feel full of possibilities. And through it all, Armin had been a steady presence, a source of support, patience, and care. One morning, as the sunlight poured through the apartment window, Zara sat quietly with a cup of tea in her hands. She watched the city waking up outside, the people hurrying to work, children laughing on their way to school, and shopkeepers opening their stores. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the warmth she now had, for the stability she had regained, and for the person who had believed in her when no one else had. Armin noticed her quiet mood and asked gently, "You're thinking about something." "You've done all the hard work yourself," he said. "I only offered support. The courage to change comes from within you, Zara. You've chosen to take those steps, and that's why you're here today." "When I first met you, I asked. Well, I pleaded for warmth in a way that I thought was all I could offer. I didn't know if anyone would see me for who I really am. I was so used to surviving, I didn't know how to live. And now I want to live fully. I want to find happiness, and I want to give back." "You already are giving back," he said. "Every step you take toward healing, every time you trust and allow yourself to feel hope, that's giving back to yourself and to the world. You've already changed more than you realize." She started working part-time at a small local bookstore, a place she had always loved as a child but had abandoned due to hardship. The work was simple but fulfilling, organizing shelves, helping customers find books, and sharing her love for reading. Each day brought a sense of accomplishment she had not experienced in years. For the first time, she realized that life could be about more than surviving. It could be about contributing, learning, and enjoying small victories. Armin supported her quietly, never pushing but always encouraging. He celebrated her successes, large and small, with genuine pride. He listened when she shared the challenges she faced at work, offered advice when she asked for it, and simply provided a stable presence when she needed comfort. Over time, Zara noticed that the way she had once feared attachment and trust was slowly transforming. She was learning that it was possible to care deeply about someone else while still protecting herself emotionally, and that allowing someone to care for her did not make her weak. One evening, as they walked through the park where spring flowers carpeted the ground, Zara paused and turned to Armin. "I've been thinking," she said softly, "about everything that's happened. About the way I felt when I first met you, and about how much my life has changed. I want to thank you truly, not just for helping me survive, but for helping me learn to live again. It shows me that what we've built together, trust, understanding, care, really matters." She was more than the fear, loneliness, and desperation of her earlier life. She was someone capable of love, trust, hope, and joy. Days turned into weeks, and Zara's confidence grew. She began volunteering at a local community center, helping other young people who were struggling. She shared her story carefully, hoping to inspire hope in those who felt lost, just as Armin had inspired hope in her. Each small act of kindness she offered reinforced the lessons she had learned, that life could be changed through patience, compassion, and courage. Through it all, her bond with Armin deepened. They laughed together, shared quiet evenings, and supported each other in ways that words could only partly capture. Zara had once thought that warmth could be bought or demanded, but she had learned that true warmth, the kind that healed the heart, came from genuine care and trust. Armin had taught her that love and kindness could exist without obligation or fear, and that accepting them could be the first step toward a meaningful life. One evening, as they sat on the small balcony of the apartment watching the city lights, Zara spoke with quiet determination. "I want to live a life that matters," she said. "Not just for me, but for others too. I want to give hope like you gave me. I want to show that people can care for each other, that kindness isn't rare. You're already making the world better." As the weeks continued, Zara and Armin's lives became intertwined in subtle, meaningful ways. They shared routines, dreams, and quiet joys, building a life based on mutual respect, trust, and genuine care. The bond they had formed was no longer about survival or immediate need. It was about connection, understanding, and the shared experience of healing. One afternoon, as they prepared tea together, Zara looked at Armin and said softly, "I never thought I would feel this way. I never thought I could trust someone so completely. But now, I know that life can be kind and that I can find love without fear. Thank you for showing me that." "You don't need to thank me, Zara," he said. "You did all the hard work. I just helped you see it, and I'm proud of the person you've become." She had been given a second chance, not just at survival but at truly living. In the months that followed, Zara continued to grow, explore, and rebuild her life. She pursued her dreams, nurtured her talents, and offered kindness to those around her. And through it all, Armin remained a steady presence, a reminder that trust, patience, and care could transform lives in ways neither person could have imagined when they first met on that cold winter night. Their story, which had begun with fear, desperation, and a plea for warmth, had evolved into a testament to the power of human connection. It showed that kindness, patience, and genuine care could heal wounds, rebuild trust, and inspire hope. For Zara, it was a journey from fear to freedom, from loneliness to love, and from survival to truly living. And in that shared journey, both Zara and Armin discovered the profound truth that life, no matter how harsh it may seem, can offer warmth to those willing to accept it. And that sometimes, choosing the heart over convenience, kindness over fear, and love over mere survival can change everything.